Consistency, the hidden force behind every major achievement. Everyone wants the result, but few people respect the process. There is a moment in almost every person's life when they decide that something has to change. Maybe they want to become better at their studies. Maybe they want to develop a skill, improve their career, become more disciplined, build confidence, or finally achieve a goal they have been thinking about for a long time. In that moment, the future feels exciting. They imagine what life could look like if they actually followed through. They make plans, they create schedules, they promise themselves that this time they will not quit. And for a while, everything seems to work. But then something very interesting happens. The excitement begins to disappear. The goal that once felt inspiring starts feeling ordinary. The work becomes repetitive. Progress becomes difficult to notice. Distractions become more interactive. And the person who was once completely determined begins to ask a dangerous question. Is this really worth it? That question is where many journeys quietly end. Not because the person was incapable, not because the goal was impossible, not because they lacked potential, but because they were expecting motivation to carry them through a process that requires consistency. And this is one of the most important lessons about achievement. The beginning of a journey is emotional, but the middle of a journey is repetitive. At the beginning, you are excited about who you might become. In the middle, you have to repeatedly do the work without constantly receiving proof that it is working. And that middle section is where consistency becomes more important than motivation. Most people admire the visible result. They see the successful student, but not the countless study sessions. They see the skilled person, but not the years of practice. They see the achievement, but not the ordinary days that came before it. They see the destination, but not the repetition. And that is why consistency is often called a hidden force. It works quietly. It does not always create immediate excitement. It does not always produce immediate results. But it keeps the process alive long enough for improvement to accumulate. So today, we are not simply going to talk about working hard. We are going to understand what consistency actually is, why human beings struggle with it, why motivation disappears, how habits and environment influence our behavior, why small actions become powerful when repeated, why setbacks do not have to destroy progress, and most importantly, how to become the kind of person who does not constantly need a new beginning. Because sometimes the difference between success and failure is not one giant decision. Sometimes it is simply the difference between stopping and continuing. The real meaning of consistency. Let's begin with the most important question. What does consistency actually mean? Most people define consistency as doing something every single day without interruption. But that definition is too rigid. Real consistency is not about perfection. It is about repeated commitment. You can have an imperfect day and still be consistent. You can take a break and still be consistent. You can change your strategy and still be consistent. You can make mistakes and still be consistent. What matters is whether you repeatedly return to the behavior that supports your important goals. Imagine a student preparing for a competitive examination. Some days they may have excellent concentration and complete a large amount of work. On another day, their energy may be lower and they may accomplish less. A third day may be disrupted by responsibilities. If they continue returning to their preparation, reviewing their mistakes, practicing questions, and improving their weak areas, their consistency has not disappeared simply because every day looked different. Consistency is therefore not about producing identical results every day. It is about maintaining the direction of your effort. Your speed may change, your schedule may change, your strategy may change, but the direction remains. And this distinction is extremely important because if you demand perfection from yourself, one impactful day can feel like failure. But if you understand consistency as returning to the process, an imperfect day becomes simply an imperfect day, not the end of the journey. Why starting is easy? Have you ever noticed how easy it is to feel motivated when you are starting something new? A new goal feels exciting because you are imagining the future rather than experiencing the difficulty of the process. When you decide to prepare seriously, you imagine the result. When you decide to learn a skill, you imagine becoming good at it. When you decide to improve yourself, you imagine the future version of yourself. The beginning is filled with possibility, but possibility is not the same as progress. Progress requires repetition, and repetition eventually becomes ordinary. The first day feels exciting because it is new. The 15th day may feel completely normal. The 100th day may feel repetitive. And this is where many people misunderstand their own emotions. They think, I don't feel excited anymore, so maybe I am losing interest. Not necessarily. Sometimes the disappearance of excitement is simply evidence that the activity has become familiar. And that is actually where consistency becomes valuable. Because when the novelty disappears, your commitment is no longer being powered by excitement, it is being powered by purpose. Motivation starts a journey, consistency builds it. Motivation has value. There is nothing wrong with being inspired. There is nothing wrong with feeling excited about your goals. Motivation can be the spark that gets you moving. But a spark is not a permanent source of energy. Your emotional state changes. Your emotional state changes. Some mornings you feel energetic, some morning you feel tired, some days you feel confident, other days you doubt yourself. Some days the work feels interesting, other days it feels repetitive. If your behavior depends entirely on how you feel, your progress will constantly rise and fall with your emotion. That is why you need something more stable. Discipline gives you the ability to act when motivation is low. Consistency allows that action to continue over time. Think of it this way. Motivation says, I want to. Discipline says, I will. Consistency says, I will keep doing it. That final part changes everything. The danger of the perfect plan. One of the biggest enemies of consistency is an unrealistic plan. People often create routines based on their ideal version of themselves. They imagine having unlimited energy, perfect concentration, no interruptions, no responsibilities, and no difficult days. Then they build a schedule around that imaginary version of themselves. The problem is that real life does not work that way. A sustainable routine has to survive ordinary circumstances. You should not build your entire system around what you can do on your most productive day. Ask yourself instead, what can I continue doing when today is not perfect? That question leads to a much more sustainable approach. Maybe your ideal study day is several focus sessions. But on a difficult day, perhaps you can complete a smaller but meaningful session. The smaller action does not mean you have abandoned your goal. It means you are protecting continuity. And continuity matters. The power of small actions. People often underestimate small actions because they compare them to the final goal. If your goal is enormous, today's action can feel insignificant. But imagine looking at a single page of a book and saying, this page will not change my life. You are probably right. But thousands of well-practiced questions can change your understanding. One day of practice may not make you skilled, but repeated practice can. One disciplined decision may not change your life, but repeated disciplined decisions can change your habits. This is why consistency changes the value of small actions. Small actions become powerful when time is allowed to multiply them. Consistency and the compound effect. Think about two people who want to develop same skill. Person A practices intensely for a few days, stops for a week, starts again, stops again, and repeatedly moves between extreme effort and complete inactivity. Person B practices at a realistic pace and continues for a month. On one particular day, person A might work harder, but over a long period, person B may accumulate far more total practice. This is one of the reasons consistency is so powerful. The advantage is not always visible immediately. It accumulates quietly. Knowledge connects with knowledge. Practice connects with practice. Experience connects with experience. Mistakes become lessons. Lessons improve decisions. Improved decisions produce better results. And better results create more confidence. The process reinforces itself. This is why you should think about progress in terms of accumulation, not individual movements. Stop asking, how fast am I improving? One of the fastest ways to become discouraged is to constantly demand visible results. You study for a few days and expect a dramatic improvement. You practice a skill for a short time and expect mastery. You follow a routine for a week and expect your life to feel completely different. But meaningful development usually takes longer. Instead of constantly asking, why am I not there yet? Ask, am I better than I was before? Maybe you understand something that confused you last month. Maybe you solve problems more efficiently. Maybe you make fewer mistakes. Maybe you can concentrate for longer. Maybe you understand weaknesses better. These are forms of progress too. Not all progress is dramatic. Some of the most important improvement is almost invisible while it is happening. Your environment is stronger than you think. We often blame ourselves for being distracted, but your environment matters enormously. Imagine trying to study while your phone is constantly producing notifications, entertainment is immediately available, and you have no clear plan for what to study. You may spend the entire session fighting distractions. Instead of asking only why don't I have enough willpower, ask why am I making focus unnecessarily difficult. Consistency becomes easier when your environment supports your intention. Prepare your materials, create a clear workspace, reduce unnecessary notifications, keep distractions away during focused work. Know what you are going to do before you sit down. You should not have to fight 20 different distractions every time you want to accomplish one important task. Good system reduce unnecessary battles. Make the right action easier. A powerful principle of consistency is simple. Reduce our distance between intention and action. If you want to study, know exactly what you will study. If you want to practice, keep your materials ready. If you want to read, keep the book accessible. If you want to work on an important project, decide the first step in advance. The more decisions you have to make before beginning, the easier it becomes to postpone the task. Sometimes procrastination is not about laziness. Sometimes it is uncertainty. You do not know where to start, so remove the uncertainty. Before finishing today's work, decide what tomorrow's first task will be. Then tomorrow does not begin with, what should I do? It begins with, I know what comes next. That small difference can make starting much easier. The one next step principle. Large goals can create mental pressure because you are thinking about everything at once. The entire syllabus, the entire examination, the entire career, the entire skill, the entire future. But you cannot complete an entire future in one day. You can only complete today's actions. So ask, what is the next meaningful step? Not, how will I accomplish everything? Just, what comes next? Open the chapter, read the concept, solve the questions, review the mistakes, complete the practice, then move to the next step. A large journey becomes manageable when you stop trying to mentally complete the entire journey before you have even taken the first step. The hardest days are part of the process. There will be days when you do not feel like working. There will be days when concentration is lower. There will be days when your routine is interrupted. There will be days when you question whether your effort is making any difference. These days are not evidence that you have failed. They are simply part of the process. The important question is not, will I ever have a difficult day? Of course you will. The better question is, what will I do when a difficult day arrives? If your answer is, I will abandon everything, then your system is fragile. If your answer is, I will just do what I realistically can and return to the process, then your system is much stronger. Consistency is not tested by easy days. It is tested by imperfect ones. The art of restarting. One of the most underrated skills in personal development is knowing how to restart without turning the restart into another dramatic event. You do not need to announce, tomorrow my entire life will change. You do not need a new notebook. You do not need a new month. You do not need a new year. You need the next action. If you stop studying, study again. If you stop practicing, practice again. If your routine broke, rebuild it. If your plan failed, improve it. The faster you learn to return, the less power setbacks have over your future. A setback becomes dangerous when you turn it into an identity. I miss my routine is a fact. I am an inconsistent person is it a conclusion. Do not confuse the two. Don't miss twice. One simple principle can protect your consistency. Do not let one interruption become a new pattern. Missing once can happen. The important thing is returning. If today did not go according to plan, do not use that as a reason to abandon tomorrow. You do not need a perfect streak. You need a strong recovery habit. The goal is not, I will never fail. The goal is, when I fail, I will recover quickly. That mindset is much more realistic. Consistency builds self-respect. There is something deeper happening every time you follow through a commitment. You are teaching yourself that your own words have meaning. When you say, I am going to do this, and then repeatedly take action, you build evidence that you can rely on yourself. That creates self-trust. And self-trust is powerful. You no longer have to constantly convince yourself that you can do something. You have evidence, you have experiences, you have proof that you can act even when the task is uncomfortable. Confidence does not always come before action. Sometimes confidence is built because of repeated action. Consistency does not mean doing the same thing forever. There is an important distinction between being consistent and being rigid. Consistency does not mean refusing to change your strategy. If your method is not working, change it. If your schedule is unrealistic, adjust it. If your approach is inefficient, improve it. If you discover a better method, use it. The goal is not to remain loyal to a particular method. The goal is to remain loyal to the direction of improvement. You can change the strategy without abandoning the mission. That is intelligent consistency. The days when nobody sees. Perhaps the most important part of consistency happens when nobody is watching. When nobody knows that you studied. When nobody sees your practice. When nobody applauds your discipline. When nobody notices that you choose your priority over action. Those moments may look insignificant, but they are not. Because the visible result people eventually notice is often built through invisible repetition. People see the performance. They do not see the practice. They see the achievement. They do not see the preparation. They see the confidence. They do not see the years of small decisions that help build it. That is why you must learn to value progress even when nobody is giving you recognition for it. Consistency is a long-term game. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking too short-term. They ask, what will I achieve this week? What will change this month? How quickly will I see results? These questions are understandable, but some goals require a longer perspective. Ask instead, who could I become if I consistently practice this for a year? That question changes your mindset. A year of learning is different from a week of learning. A year of disciplined practice is different from a few days of enthusiasm. A year of thoughtful improvement can create a completely different level of ability. You do not have to transform overnight. You have to keep building. The real difference between intention and achievement. Almost everyone has intentions. I want to improve. I want to study. I want to become successful. I want to learn. I want to achieve my goals. Intentions are easy. Actions are harder. And repeated actions are harder still. That is why consistency is the bridge between intention and achievement. Your intention tells you what you want. Your action shows what you are willing to do. So consistency determines whether those actions accumulate enough to create meaningful progress. You can have a brilliant goal. You can have an excellent plan. You can have enormous potential. But without repeated execution, potential remains potential. Consistency converts possibility into progress. Build a system you can live with. If you want long-term consistency, stop creating routines that require you to fight yourself every day. Create a system that fits your actual life. Understand when you have the most energy. Identify your common distractions. Choose realistic workloads. Create clear priorities. Protect important time. Allow appropriate rest. Review your progress. And make adjustments when necessary. The best system is not the one that looks impressive. It is the one that you can actually follow. A simple system followed consistently is often more valuable than a complicated system followed occasionally. The final lesson. Now let's return to the question we started with. Why do so many people start but fail to continue? Because starting gives you the emotional reward of possibility. Continuing requires patience. Starting feels exciting. Continuing can feel ordinary. Starting allows you to imagine the result. Continuing requires you to trust the process. And this is why consistency is such a powerful skill. It teaches you to continue after the excitement disappears. It teaches you to act without needing constant motivation. It teaches you to recover for imperfect days. It teaches you to value small actions. It teaches you to think long term. And most importantly, it teaches you that progress does not have to be dramatic to be real. Final message. So, if you remember only one thing from this entire video, remember this. You do not need to win every day. You need to keep playing the long game. Some days will be productive. Some days will be ordinary. Some days will be difficult. Some days will not go according to plan. But none of those individual days has to define your entire journey. What matters is the pattern, the repeated return, the decision to continue, the willingness to take another step. Because your future is not built only during your best moments. It is built during ordinary moments when you choose to do what matters even though you could easily postpone it. It is built when you study even though the result is still far away. It is built when you practice even though you are not yet good at something. It is built when you return after a setback. It is built when you stop waiting for perfect motivation. It is built when you decide that your goal deserves repeated effort. And perhaps that is the deepest meaning of consistency. Not forcing yourself to be perfect, but becoming someone who keeps returning to what matters. So do not ask, how can I completely change my life tomorrow? Ask, what is the one meaningful thing I can do today? Then do it. Tomorrow, do the next one. And the day after that, continue. You may not notice the difference immediately, but keep going. Because one day you will look back and realize that the person you become was built through thousands of decisions that seemed small at the time. The chapter you studied, the question you practiced, the skill you repeated, the distraction you ignored, the difficult day you survived, the setback you recovered from, the morning you did not feel motivated but still took action. Those moments were not insignificant. They were the building blocks. And that is why consistency is powerful. Consistency turns effort into experience. Experience turns into ability. Ability creates confidence. And repeated progress moves you closer to the person you want to become. You do not need a perfect beginning. You do not need perfect circumstances. You do not need perfect motivation. You simply need a direction worth following and the willingness to keep moving. Start small. Make it realistic. Protect your attention. Trust the process. Adjust when necessary. And when you fall off track, return. Because the goal is not to never stop. The goal is to become someone who knows how to start again without losing sight of the destination. One action, then another, then another. That is how consistency works. Quietly, gradually, repeatedly, until one day, what once seemed impossible has become the result of everything you refuse to stop doing. Keep showing up. Keep improving. Keep moving forward. Because your future is being shaped by what you repeatedly do today. And that is the hidden power of consistency.